All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to start in on Chapter 10-2, Notes Day 2. We got the old parabola. Goals for today, we're going to look at equations of parabolas and find those. We're going to graph these guys and then work with parabolas with vertexes H and K's. That's when they start moving around away from the origin. And the little warm-up for today is to remind yourselves the formulas, right? So the first two are those that are opening left and right. Are these functions, yes or no?
No.
These are not functions. So remember a function, every x can only have one y. Every person can only have one birthday except for that dirty dog, Ryan. He had 2 birthdays. Oh, you dirty dog. Now, the reason why I say that is that these are not functions. That means for these x's, they're getting 2 y's, which means the y's are squared. Okay, so that's kind of why I say that, is to get you guys thinking about that. So the y values are squared. So this is going to be y minus k, and you have a vertex h and k. Y minus k coin squared equals 4a and x minus h. Remember, h is always with x, k is always with y, and it's opposite of what you see in parentheses. We talked about what the a value was on Friday, and the a value is the distance from your vertex to your focus and from your vertex to what we call the directrix. And what the directrix is just an arbitrary line behind your parabola so that any point on your parabola is equal distant to your focus and to that directrix. So if I was to find that distance here and here, they would be the same. Okay. Now you don't need to know that for a quiz or test, but you should definitely know what h and k are, and you should know what a represents and how to graph all this stuff. Okay. So this one opens to the right, and if it opens to the left, the formula is identical, except it's negative 4a. It's x minus h. That's an x. So y minus k coin squared equals negative 4a times the coin x minus h. H is always with x, k is always with y. And if it's negative in front, that means it's left. And the little trick we said, positive people are right-handed, so negative people are left-handed. And I don't think we have any lefties in here, do we? Except for one. Sorry, Corinne. Poor Corinne. But she knows she's a positive gal. Right? All right, so when we look at the other ones, we got smiley faces and frowny faces. These are the functions. These are where the x's are squared. So this is x minus h quantity squared equals positive for smiley faces, 4a times the quantity y minus k. And if it's a frowny face, the formula is identical, except it's a negative 4a times the quantity y minus k. So we have 4 formulas now. The nice thing is on top of your packet, you guys had your formula sheet that you can use on any quiz or test. And you can make a little notes to yourself on that where you can tell yourself, hey, what h and k is. Or a little reminder, hey, take opposite of what you see inside of parentheses. And then maybe even describe what A is. A is from the vertex to your focus, vertex to your directrix. Okay. All right. So let's get this thing started. Any questions on the front here? We have 3 quick examples we're going to go through. So here we go. That's just to sketch a graph and write the equation for each parabola with the given information. And as I scroll up here, example 1 has something what we call general form, where everything is on this side. I have x squared plus 4x minus 4y equals 0. Okay. Now, this does not look like the formulas on the front side. So what we want to do is we want to try to get this to look like one of those formulas. Okay. Now, who's squared? The x's are squared, right? So it's going to resemble the one with the x's squared. Okay, so I'll go ahead and write this. It's going to look like this. X minus h squared equals positive or negative 4a. I don't know. We'll find that out. And y minus k. We're just trying to get this guy here to look like one of these guys, either plus or minus. I'm not sure. Okay. That's what we need to do. All right, so suggestions. What do we need to do with this x squared plus 4x minus 4y equals 0? This is where we come up with some ideas here. This is called brainstorming. We're just going to come up as a class suggestions. And I'll say yay or nay, that's something we want to do, or let's hold off and do that later. So suggestions, how do we make this guy look like this guy? What do you think? I'm hearing complete the square. I'm hearing divide. Factor. We're not going to factor quite yet. How do we get this to look like this? Robert.
Would you add 4y to 1 0?
Yeah, buddy. So Robert's noticing, hey, over here, all the x's are on the left and everything else is on the right. That's first step. So Robert, awesome. We're going to do that. So I'm going to add 4y over. That way I have all the x's on one side. Leave some room. And we're going to have everything else on the other side. Awesome. Good job, Rob. Okay. Now, I did hear the answer already. Now, we're going to try to get this to look like a quantity squared. Does anybody remember how to get this to look like this guy? How do you get a quantity squared? Logan, you know?
Complete the square.
Ding, 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 ding. Complete the square. And then everybody goes, no, not that thing again. I told you guys, it never goes away. Completing the square comes back every chapter. And in this chapter, it comes back in 10-2 parabolas, comes back in 10-3 ellipses, and again in hyperbolas. When you look at the test, guys, you will see at least 2 to 3 questions that involve completing the square. So some of you guys really got to figure this out.
How many questions will be on?
3 questions.
We're on 10.
So we got to complete the square. We're going to take our b value. We're going to divide by 2 and square it. Now, when we talk about b, I'm assuming we know ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. I'm assuming you know the b value is the number in front of x. So go here and tell me what the number in front of x is.
4.
This guy right here, right? I'll highlight it for you. This is b. Because sometimes you guys know where I'm getting that number from. B. So I'm going to take 4. I'm going to divide by 2. And then square it. What's 4 divided by 2? 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to add 4 pounds over here. Whoa. You got to do it to both sides or it's out of whack. Right? Whoa. Again, add 4 pounds over here. Whoa. It's a scale. You got to add it to the other side. Whoa. Make it equal. Okay? So we've got x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 4y plus 4. Any questions so far? Now we factor. We got to come up with factors of the red 4 that add up to this blue highlighted 4. There you go. So factors of x squared are x and x. Factors of the red one that add up to the blue one are plus 2 and plus 2. And the reason why it's called completing the square is the quantity should be exactly the same, so we can write it as a quantity squared. So we get x plus 2 quantity squared on that side. Now on this side, we want, let me scroll down just a touch here. We want to look like this guy, where we have a 4-ish number here. Okay, so we want to just take out the greatest common factor on this side. So 4y plus 4, I can take out a 4. And now that leaves me with a binomial. What's left? Y plus 1. Right? So that when we multiply back 4 times y is 4y, 4 times 1 is 4. You guys good with that? Questions? Now, I have a pretty good idea which way this thing's going. Right? The x's are squared and it's a positive 4 in front. Is this thing going up, down, left, or right? It's going up. If the x's are squared, we talked about it on the front side, those are up or downs. Because it's positive, we know we have a smiley face. Okay? And again, we got to come up with the vertex. We got to figure out what the A value is so that we can come up with our focus. And then the directrix. Quiz or test, all these will be blanks. You got to fill those in. Okay? Vertex and focus is a coordinate point, and then the directrix is a line. So let's take a look. H and K. H is always with X. K is always with Y, and we always say opposite of what you see. So what is our H and K value?
-2.
X plus 2, that's going to be a -2. And for the K, Y plus 1, that's going to be a -1. Is everybody okay with that? So I'm going to count over to the left, 1, 2, and down 1. And there is our little vertex. Okay. A. I got to find the A value. Okay. Whatever this number is in this formula 4A. So whatever this number is, this guy right here, set that equal to 4A and solve for A. And what do we got to do? Divide by 4. And we get A is 1. So I'm going to write that up here. A is 1. Any questions why it's 1? All right, so now we got to do our focus. We got our vertex. Now I need my focus. Which way do I go? The parabola is, again, up and going up, a smiley face, and your focus is inside of your parabola. So that coordinate point would be what, -2, 0? You guys okay with that? And now just give me a rough sketch of what this things look like. If this was HPC, we'd actually find it at least a point on each side. But this is regular PC. We don't have to do that. Okay? So again, there's my vertex, there's my focus. I knew my focus is going up because my graph of the parabola is a smiley face. The focus is inside of that bowl. Last but not least, count back A, count back down 1, and that is how you find your directrix. Your directrix is a line that doesn't touch or cross your parabola. The visual that I gave people on Friday was, this is kind of like your breakfast table at home. This is your breakfast bowl, and inside your bowl is your Fruit Loops, right? You wouldn't have your Fruit Loops outside of the bowl. That's crazy, right? You wouldn't have your bowl go through your breakfast table. That's crazy. That'd be the axis of symmetry. Okay. So last thing is come up with this equation. Is this a y equals or an x equals line? Crosses the y-axis. This is horizontal at y equals what, -2? So again, I've got my vertex. I got my vertex, I got my focus and my directrix, and we're good to go. Okay. Questions, y'all? Give me a thumb where we're at on this. We got another one I want to walk you through. Okay. And again, if you weren't here, you might be here. If you weren't here Friday, you got a lot to learn. Again, the video from day 1 is posted. Okay. All right. So let's move on to number 2. Okay. Now, don't write this down. I just want to talk about this part. Okay. If number 2 looked like this, the first thing I would want to do is identify who's squared. The y. So if the y is squared, then I want to leave these 2 y's here and then move this guy and that guy over using addition and subtraction. Okay. Now on number 2, it already has that. It already has the y squared. So, and it already has these guys on the other side. So this thing's ready to go. I just want to talk about if it didn't look like that, what you would do. Just once you identify who's squared, leave those 2 variables on the left and move everything else on the right is the big idea. Okay. This thing's ready to go now. I just rewrote it just so I could complete the square. Take your b value, divide by 2, and square it. Take b, divide by 2 and square. What's b? Negative 2. I'm getting that from this guy here. This guy. Take negative 2, divide by 2. That's what, negative 1? What's negative 1 squared? 1. Whoa. Whoa. Add it to both sides. And then we factor. What are factors of this red 1 that add up to negative 2? Factors of red 1. You're either +1 +1 or -1 -1. Y minus 1 and y minus 1. When you multiply negative 1 times negative 1, that is +1. And when you add it together, negative 1 and negative 1 is negative 2. So it works out. Put them together, that's y minus 1 quantity squared. Over here, these ones are just canceling. Negative 1 plus 1, you're just left with 8x. Okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with that formula. There we go. There's our equation. You guys okay with that? All right. Now, I should know which way this thing's going. The y's are squared, and this is positive. So if the y's are squared, it's not a function. There's 2 y's for the x's, right? So it's left or right, not a function. It's positive, so it's going to the right. It's a positive 8, so I know it's going right. Any questions why it's going right? Quiz or test, I'm going to have little blanks off to the side so you know what you need to solve for. There'll be a blank for the vertex, there'll be a blank for the focus, and there'll be a blank for the directrix. Okay. So vertexes are h and k. Remember, h is always with x, k is always with y. Now in this case, this does not have a set of parentheses. There's no x minus h. There's no like x minus or plus anything. So in this case, it's like x minus 0, right? If you don't see anything we talked about, that's just a 0. But the k value, y minus 1, is really opposite of what you see, so that's plus 1. The other half, part of the problem is we got to make sure we know how to graph 0, 1, which you guys know how to do. So you just go up 1, and there's our vertex. Label. I always ask you to label the V's and F's. So there we go. I got my focus at 0, 1. Hey, got to find your A value. Somebody with a hand up. Let's get some different people answering questions here. A. What do we do? How do we find the A value? Suggestions. How do we find A? Corinne.
Divide the 8 by 4.
Yeah, so whatever's here in front, you can set that equal to 4a or negative 4a. It doesn't really matter. A, we always say, is a distance. So I always say A is going to be positive no matter what. Divide by 4, and now we got A is 2. Perfect. We know which way this parabola goes, right? We know this thing goes to the right, so I'm going to count to the right too. So Corinne, great job. And there's my focus. And if I was at 0, 1, now I'm at 2, 1 for the focus. Just rough sketch of what that thing would look like. You don't need to come up with any points here. Looks like that. And then last but not least, just go back the other way for your directrix. So I went to the right for the focus, and I go left, 1, 2, for the directrix. And that crosses the x-axis at what x equals negative 2. It's a vertical line. So remember, horizontal lines has a z in it. Z is right next to the y. Vertical line, u, v, w, x. That's an x equals line. Or what axis does it cross? This one crosses just the x-axis. So I get final answers. All right. Any questions, y'all? We good? Give me a thumb now. Where are we at? Is this getting better? Something, thumbs up, thumbs. Okay. All right, so I'm done with examples 1 and 2. The last one on your homework, there is last 2 questions on your homework are just asking you to come up with the equation of a given parabola. So now this is completely going backwards. Before we would give you the equation and ask you to graph it, now they're saying here's an equation, or here's a parabola, now come up with the equation. Okay? So if we're coming up with an equation, the first thing I got to do is which equation is it? Are the y squared or the x squared, is it going to be positive or negative? So it's based on the shape. This thing's going up, so which formula am I using? The x's are squared, positive or negative? Positive. So I get x minus h quantity squared equals a positive 4a times the quantity y minus k. When I'm all done, I should get a number here for h. I should figure out a number here for a and plug it in and simplify. And I should get a number here for k. Once I have h, k, and a, I'm good to go. Okay, so when I take a look, did they give us h and k, or vertex? You see the vertex? You guys see that? This is the vertex right here. That's our vert. This is our h. This is our k. Okay. So I can go ahead and plug those in so you can kind of see where we're at in terms of finding those. So I've got x minus a negative 2. So that's plus 2 when you subtract the negative. Equals 4a. And then y minus k. Y minus negative 3 is plus 3. So we're almost done. The problem is, when you do these, they're not going to blatantly tell you that this is a focus. They might tell you it's a focus. They might not. That might just be some random point. I don't know. And they're definitely not going to give you any information on the distance there. I really don't know where that guy is graphed. So I have to find this algebraically. I need to find A. Well, for me to find A, I have to use the other point that's given. Okay, now think about a coordinate point. Any arbitrary coordinate point, we usually use 2 letters for coordinate points. What are the 2 letters we normally use? Somebody with a hand up. What are the 2 letters we use for any coordinate point in the alphabet? What are the 2 letters we always use? Nick? X and Y, right? This is your X value, and this is your Y value. Well, we can plug that in here and here. Okay, so here's the big idea. In your formula, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, right? 5 variables. And they are giving you 1, 2, 3, 4. They're giving you 4 out of 5 things. So anytime somebody gives you 1 out of 2 things or 4 out of 5 things, plug in what you know to find what you don't know. Does that make sense? So now we can plug in this guy here and here. X is 2, so I've got 2 plus 2 squared. 4a. Y is negative 1 plus 3. And now we just do a little algebra here. What's 2 plus 2? 4 squared is 16. We get 4a, negative 1 plus 3. 2. 4 times 2 is 8a. And then we can go ahead and divide by 8. And we get what? 2? You guys good with that?
Yeah.
So now I can take 2 and plug it in right there. And my final answer with h, k, and a is x plus 2 squared equals 4a, where a is 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. Just doing 4 times 2 there. And then y plus 3. So now there's my equation of that parabola. I knew I had to find a value, h and k. They gave us h and k. They didn't give us enough about a. So we use the coordinate point that they have on the graph to plug in and find A. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much walks you through everything that we've done to this point. So if we look, we should be good with finding equations of parabolas. Even when they give you the graph, you should be able to do that. Graphing parabolas. Looks like you guys are doing pretty good with that. And then working with parabolas, vertexes, H and K. What's some common things you got to remember with H and K?
H goes with X.
Yep.
A goes with Y.
Yep, they're saying H goes with X, K goes with Y. So sometimes they're on different sides of the equation, right, of the equal sign. And when you grab those numbers, what do you got to make sure you do? What do we always say? Opposite of what you see in parentheses. So those are the little mistakes people make, so watch out. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. I'm signing off here.